to success in afterlife. Uranus became Sukra by having gratified the god of gods. Indeed, by hymning the praises of the goddess, he sports in the firmament, endues with great splendor. 1520. Then, again, Asita and Divala, and Narada and Parvata, and Kakshavat, and Jamadani's son Rama, and Tandya possessed of cleansed soul, and Vasishta, and Jamadani, and Viswamitra and Atri, and Bharadwa, and Harismasru, and Kandadara, and Sarutasravas, these great rishis, by adoring Vishnu with concentrated minds with the aid of riches, and by penances, succeeded in attaining to success through the grace of that great deity endued with intelligence. Many and deserving men, by adoring that good deity, obtained great distinction. One should not seek for advancement by achieving any wicked or censurable act. That wealth which is earned by righteous ways is true wealth. Fie on that wealth, however, which is earned by unrighteous means. Righteousness is eternal. It should never, in this world, be abandoned from desire of wealth. That righteous suit person who keeps his sacred fire and offers his daily adorations to the deities is regarded as the foremost of righteous persons. All the Vedas, O foremost of kings, are established on the three sacred fires, called Dakshina, Garhapatya, and Agavaniya. That Brahmana is said to possess the sacred fire whose acts exist in their entirety. It is better to at once abandon the sacred fire than to keep it, abstaining the while from acts. The sacred fire, the mother, the father who has begotten, and the preceptor, O tiger among men, should all be duly waited upon and served with humility. That man who, casting off all feelings of pride, humbly waits upon and serves them that are venerable for age, who is possessed of learning and destitute of lust, who looketh upon all creatures with an eye of love, who has no wealth, who is righteous in his acts, and who is destitute of the desire of inflicting any kind of harm upon any one, that truly respectable man is worshipped in this world by those that are good and pious. 1521. Section Xif. Parasaras said, the lowest order, it is proper, should derive their sustenance from the three other orders. Such service, rendered with affection and reverence, makes them righteous. 1522. If the ancestors of any Sudra were not engaged in service, he should not still engage himself in any other occupation than service. Truly, he should apply himself to service as his occupation. In my opinion, it is proper from them to associate, under all circumstances, with good men devoted to righteousness, but never with those that are wicked. As in the eastern hills, jewels and metals blaze with greater splendor in consequence of their adjacence to the sun, even so the lowest order blazes with splendor in consequence of their association with the good. A piece of white cloth assumes the hue with which it is dyed. Even such is the case with Sudras. 1523. Hence also, one should attach oneself to all good qualities but never to qualities that are evil. The life of human beings in this world is fleeting and transitory. That wise man who, in happiness as also in misery, achieves only what is good, is regarded as a true observer of the scriptures. That man who is endued with intelligence would never do an act which is dissociated from virtue, however high may the advantages be of that act. Indeed, such an act is not regarded as truly beneficial. That lawless king who, snatching thousands of kine from their lawful owners, gives them away, and to deserving persons, acquires no fruit from that act of giving, beyond an empty sound, expressive of the act he does. On the other hand, he incurs the sin of theft. The self-born at first created the being called Datri held in universal respect. Datri created a son who was engaged in upholding all the worlds. 1524. Worshipping that deity, the Vaisya employs himself, for the means of his support in agriculture and the rearing of cattle. The Kshatriyas should employ themselves in the task of protecting all the other classes. The Brahmanas should only enjoy. As regards the Sudras, they should engage themselves in the task of humbly and honestly collecting together the articles that are to be offered in sacrifices, and in cleaning altars and other places where sacrifices are to be performed. If each order acts in this way, righteousness would not suffer any diminution. If righteousness is preserved in its entirety, all creatures inhabiting the earth would be happy. Beholding the happiness of all creatures on earth, the deities in heaven become filled with gladness. Hence, that king who, agreeably to the duties laid down for his order, protects the other classes, becomes worthy of respect. Similarly, the Brahmana that is employed in studying the scriptures, the Vaisya that is engaged in earning wealth, and the Sudra that is always engaged in serving the three other classes with concentrated attention, become objects of respect. By conducting themselves in the other ways, O chief of men, each order is said to fall away from virtue. Keeping aside gifts by thousands, even 20 cowries that one may give painfully, having earned them righteously, will be productive of the great benefit. Those persons, O king, who make gifts unto Brahmanas after reverencing them duly, reap excellent fruits commensurate with those gifts. That gift is highly prized which the donor makes after seeking out the donee and honouring him properly. That gift is middling which the donor makes upon solicitation. That gift, however, which is made contemptuously and without any reverence, is said to be very inferior in point of merit. Even this is what those utterers of the truth, viz., the sages, say. While sinking in this ocean of life, man should always seek to cross that ocean by various means. Indeed, he should so exert himself that he might be freed from the bonds of this world. The Brahmana shines by self-restraint, the Kshatriya by victory, the Vaisya by wealth, while the Sudra always shines in glory through cleverness in serving the three other orders. Section CCXCV. Parasara said, in the Brahmana, wealth acquired by acceptance of gifts, in the Kshatriya that won by victory in battle, in the Vaisya that obtained by following the duties laid down for his order, and in the Sudra that earned by serving the three other orders, however small its measure, is worthy of praise, and spent for the acquisition of virtue is productive of great benefits. The Sudra is said to be the constant servitor of the three other classes. If the Brahmana, pressed for a living, betakes himself to the duties of either the Kshatriya or the Vaisya, he does not fall off from righteousness. When, however, the Brahmana betakes himself to the duties of the lowest order, then does he certainly fall off. When the Sudra is unable to obtain his living by service of the three other orders, then trade, rearing of cattle, and the practice of the mechanical arts are lawful for him to follow. Appearance on the boards of a theatre and disguising oneself in various forms, exhibition of puppets, the sale of spirits and meat, and trading in iron and leather, should never be taken up for purposes of a living by one who had never before been engaged in those professions, every one of which is regarded as censurable in the world. It hath been heard by us that if one engaged in them can abandon them, one then acquires great merit. When one that has become successful in life behaves sinfully in consequence of one's mind being filled with arrogance, one's acts under such circumstances can never pass for authority. It is heard in the Puranas that formerly mankind was self-restrained, that they held righteousness in great esteem, that the practices they followed for livelihood were all consistent with propriety and the injunctions laid down in the scriptures, and that the only punishment that was required for chastising them when they went wrong was the crying of fire on them. 1525, at the time of which we speak, O King, righteousness, and nothing else, was much applauded among men. Having achieved great progress in righteousness, Men in those days worshipped only all good qualities that they saw. The Asuras, however, O child, could not bear that righteousness which prevailed in the world. Multiplying, in both number and energy, the Asuras, in the form of lust and wrath, entered the bodies of men. Then was pride generated in men that is so destructive of righteousness. From pride arose arrogance, and from arrogance arose wrath. When men thus became overwhelmed with wrath, conduct implying modesty and shame disappeared from them, and then they were overcome by heedlessness. Afflicted by heedlessness, they could no longer see as before, and as the consequence thereof they began to oppress one another and thereby acquire wealth without any compunction. When men became such, the punishment of only crying fie on offenders failed to be of any effect. Men, showing no reverence for either the gods or Brahmanas, began to indulge their senses to their fill. 1526. At that time the deities repaired to that foremost of gods, viz., Shiva, possessed of patience, of multiform aspect, and endued with the foremost of attributes, and sought his protection. The deities imparted unto him their conjoined energy, and thereupon the great god, with a single shaft, felled on the earth those three Asuras, viz., desire, wrath, and cupidity, who were staying in the firmament, along with their very habitations. 1527. The fierce chief of those Asuras, possessed of fierce prowess, who had struck the Devas with terror, was also slain by Mahadeva armed with the lance. 1528. When this chief of the Asuras was slain, men once more obtained their proper natures, and once more began to study the Vedas and the other scriptures as was in former times. Then the 7 ancient rishis came forward and installed Vasava as the chief of the gods and the ruler of heaven. And they took upon themselves the task of holding the rod of chastisement over mankind. After the 7 rishis came King Viprithu to rule mankind, and many other kings, all belonging to the Kshatriya order for separately ruling separate groups of human beings. When Mahadeva dispelled all evil passions from the minds of creatures, there were, in those ancient times, certain elderly men from whose minds all wicked feelings did not fly away. Hence, in consequence of that wicked state of their minds and of those incidents that were connected with it, there appeared many kings of terrible prowess who began to indulge in only such acts as were fit for Asuras. Those human beings that are exceedingly foolish adhere to those wicked acts, establish them as authorities, and follow them in practice to this day. 1529. For this reason, O King, I say unto thee, having reflected properly with the aid of the scriptures, that one should abstain from all acts that are fraught with injury or malice and seek to acquire a knowledge of the soul. 1530. The man possessed of wisdom would not seek wealth for the performance of religious rites by ways that are unrighteous and that involve an abandonment of morality. Wealth earned by such means can never prove beneficial. Do thou then become a kshatriya of this kind. Do thou restrain thy senses, be agreeable to thy friends, and cherish, according to the duties of thy order, thy subjects, servants, and children. Through the union of both prosperity and adversity, in man's life, there arise friendships and animosities. Thousands,